I was being brought to set in a wheelchair. Like, I couldn't walk that far. So I had to tell everybody because I needed help. You know, I needed someone to help me stand, and I needed someone to help. I needed someone to help me to get there.
There are friendships that form on a film set and dissolve the moment the final scene wraps. There are co-stars who smile for the cameras, share a laugh at the wrap party, and never speak again. Hollywood is filled with those kinds of stories. But every now and then, something different happens. Every now and then, two people find each other in the middle of a production and forge a connection so genuine, so deep, and so enduring that it outlasts the show, outlasts the fame, and outlasts even the hardest moments life can throw at a person. That is the story of Christina Applegate and Ed O'Neill. And after a recent reunion brought the two of them back into the public eye together, Christina has finally started pulling back the curtain on what their relationship has truly meant to her across nearly 4 decades of life in Hollywood. To understand why this story matters so much, you have to go back to where it all began. The year was 1987. Ronald Reagan was in the White House. The television landscape was dominated by wholesome family sitcoms that painted a picture of American life that felt increasingly disconnected from reality. And then came Married with Children. The show was unlike anything that had appeared on network television before. It was raw, it was loud, it was deliberately offensive, and it was absolutely hilarious. Fox was still a fledgling network desperate for something that would make people pay attention. Married with Children was exactly the kind of attention-grabbing, conversation-starting show they needed. Into this chaotic, groundbreaking production walked a 15-year-old girl named Christina Applegate. She had been acting since she was a toddler, but nothing could have prepared her for what it meant to be Kelly Bundy. The character was written as a teenage girl who was beautiful, ditzy, and endlessly the subject of jokes about her appearance and her intelligence. For a teenager navigating her own identity while simultaneously becoming a public figure, the role came with challenges that most adults would have struggled to handle. Ed O'Neill was 41 years old when the show began. He had spent years working his way through the entertainment industry, building the kind of experience and perspective that only comes from years of struggle and survival in a notoriously unforgiving business. He knew what Hollywood could do to people. He had watched it chew through talent without mercy. He understood the specific dangers that young performers faced, particularly young women who were suddenly thrust into roles that invited a certain kind of attention from the public. And when he met Christina Applegate on that set, something shifted in him. He made a decision. Not one that anyone asked him to make, and not one that came with any professional obligation. He simply decided that he was going to look out for her. What Christina has been sharing in recent conversations paints a picture of a man who took that responsibility with remarkable seriousness. This was not Ed O'Neill performing the role of a mentor. This was genuine, consistent, behind-the-scenes protection from someone who understood the environment better than anyone else on that set. When conversations among the crew veered into territory that was inappropriate for a teenager to be part of, Ed redirected them. When certain moments during filming made Christina uncomfortable, Ed noticed before she even had to say anything. When producers pushed for things that crossed lines that should not have been crossed with a minor, Ed pushed back. He was not her parent. He was not her manager. He was her co-star. But he chose to be something more than that, and it made all the difference. Christina has spoken in recent years about how profoundly that shaped her experience on the show. Imagine being a teenager working in an adult world, surrounded by adult conversations, adult humor, adult pressures, on a show that was specifically designed to push boundaries. Without someone like Ed creating that protective space around her, those 11 years could have been something very different. Instead, they were the years that gave her a foundation. They were the years that taught her how to be a professional, how to handle pressure, how to survive in an industry that does not naturally nurture the people inside it. And the person who gave her most of those lessons was not a teacher or a coach or a therapist. It was a man pretending to be her father on television who quietly became something close to that in real life. The show itself became a cultural phenomenon in ways that nobody predicted at the start. By the time the infamous boycott campaign of 1989 erupted, Married with Children had already developed a devoted audience. Terry Ricalta's campaign, launched in outrage over content she found objectionable, triggered a response from major advertisers that briefly made it look like the show might not survive. For Christina, who was 17 years old at the time, this was genuinely terrifying. Her entire professional life existed within that show. The thought of it disappearing was not an abstract business concern. It was an existential crisis for a teenager who had built her identity around being part of this cast and this family. What Ed O'Neill did during that period is something Christina has only recently begun to fully articulate. He steadied her. He sat with the younger cast members and talked them through the uncertainty with a calm that he may not have entirely felt himself, but that he projected because he knew they needed it. He gave interviews defending the show, defending its people, and ensuring that the narrative in the press included voices that spoke for the young performers who were caught in the middle of an adult culture war. The boycott, as history records, backfired completely. The controversy drove curiosity. The ratings went up. The show not only survived but came out of the experience more popular than it had been before. But the thing Christina holds onto from that period is not the victory. It is the memory of Ed standing steady beside her when everything felt uncertain. 11 seasons. That is what they built together. By the time Married with Children ended in 1997, Christina Applegate had grown from 15 to 26 on that soundstage. She had formed her entire adult identity inside that production. The show did not end with a grand finale or a proper send-off. It simply stopped, the way many television shows do, leaving the cast to process the abrupt ending of something that had consumed over a decade of their lives. Christina has talked about how disorienting that was. One day she had a place to go, a family around her, a routine that anchored her life. And then suddenly, none of that existed anymore. The set was gone. The family had scattered. Hollywood had moved on. But Ed O'Neill had not moved on from Christina. And Christina had not moved on from him. The relationship they had built did not belong to the show. It belonged to them. They stayed in contact. They checked in on each other. Ed watched Christina's career continue to grow with the pride of someone who had been there at the very beginning, who had watched her develop into the force she became. Christina's post-Married with Children career was genuinely remarkable. She built a body of work across film and television that earned her serious critical respect. She was funny in ways that surprised people who had only seen her as Kelly Bundy. She was dramatic in ways that elevated her beyond the box that audiences had placed her in. She won awards. She earned the kind of recognition that comes not from playing a famous character, but from demonstrating genuine, undeniable talent over time. Through all of it, Ed was a presence in her life. Not loudly, not in ways that made headlines. Just consistently, privately, the way real relationships actually work when they are built on something genuine. Then came August 2021. Christina posted a message on social media that stopped people in their tracks. She announced that she had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. The diagnosis had come while she was in the middle of filming the final season of Dead to Me for Netflix. MS is a chronic neurological disease with no cure. The symptoms vary from person to person but can include profound difficulties with mobility, balance, fatigue, vision, and cognitive function. For Christina, the diagnosis arrived like a wall she had not seen coming. Everything changed at once. The life she had been living, the physical ease she had taken for granted, the future she had been building, all of it had to be reconstructed around this new reality. She began using a cane. She began experiencing the kind of cognitive fog that made certain professional demands genuinely difficult. She began the long, ongoing process of grief that comes when the life you planned is replaced by one you did not choose. What she has revealed about Ed O'Neill's response to this news speaks to the heart of everything their relationship has always been. He did not send a polite message and move on with his day. He showed up for her in the way he had always shown up for her, with the same consistency and genuine care that had defined his presence in her life since she was a teenager on his set. He made absolutely certain that she knew she was loved and that she was not navigating this alone. The entire Married with Children cast circled around her during this period. Katie Segal, who had played her television mother for 11 years, has been particularly vocal in her public support. David Faustino, her TV brother, has made his love for her clear. The family they had built on screen revealed itself once again to be something that existed well beyond the edges of the script. But it was Ed's response that Christina has singled out as meaning the most. He was still doing what he had always done. He was still making sure she was okay. In November 2022, Christina made her first significant public appearance since the diagnosis. She received her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and the decision to show up, to stand in front of that crowd with her cane, and face the world on her own terms was an act of genuine courage. Many people in her situation would have found reasons to stay private, to protect themselves from the vulnerability of being seen in a changed body before a public audience. Christina did the opposite. She showed up. She spoke. Her voice broke with emotion at moments, but she never stopped talking. She talked about the fear she had faced. She talked about the people who had carried her through it. She talked about what it meant to have relationships in her life that were real, that were built on something deeper than professional convenience or shared fame. The crowd that day understood that they were witnessing something beyond a career milestone. They were watching a woman choose courage in the most public way possible. Then came January 2023 and the Emmy Awards. When Christina walked onto that stage, something extraordinary happened. The audience rose. Every single person in that room stood up and applauded her, and they kept applauding for what felt, in the stillness of that moment, like forever. Christina stood there with her cane and absorbed wave after wave of love from an industry that was telling her, without words, that they saw her and they honored her. She responded the way she has always responded to overwhelming emotion, with humor. She quipped about the noise shaking her brain, and the audience laughed and cried at the same time because she had done what she has always done. She had found the lightness inside the heavy moment. That is a rare gift. What most viewers watching at home did not see was what happened after the broadcast. Christina has spoken about the private conversations that took place throughout that evening, the old friends who found her, the former collaborators who reached out, the outpouring of genuine affection from people she had worked with across her entire career. Ed O'Neill was among those who made sure she knew she was seen and loved that night. The dynamic between them, unchanged across nearly 4 decades, was still exactly what it had always been. He was still checking on her. He was still making sure she was all right. Christina has since launched a podcast called Messy, which she co-hosts with actress Jamie Lynn Sigler, who also lives with MS. The podcast has given her a platform that fits her current reality. She can speak openly. She can connect with her audience. She can share her experience with the millions of people living with chronic illness who have found something valuable in watching her navigate this with honesty. And in the conversations she has been having through that platform and through various interviews, she has been more forthcoming than ever before about what certain relationships in her life have meant to her. The things she has said about Ed O'Neill in these recent discussions represent the clearest picture yet of just how significant his presence has been across the full arc of her life. There are now ongoing conversations about the possibility of a married with children reunion in some form. The traditional sitcom revival model with long shooting days and the physical demands of a live studio production is not currently something Christina could easily manage given her health. But the cast and the people around them have made something very clear. Any version of a reunion happens with Christina at the center of it, or it does not happen at all. Ed O'Neill has stated this position in terms that leave no room for ambiguity. He has no interest in revisiting Al Bundy without Kelly Bundy beside him. The same is true for the other cast members. They are not a show without her. They are a family, and families do not have reunions where they leave someone out. The formats being discussed are wider and more creative than a standard revival would allow. A documentary exploring the show's legacy and the cast's journey across the decades since it ended. A special of some kind that could be structured around Christina's current capabilities and needs. A project that honors what they built together while also telling the story of who they have all become since. Nothing has been officially confirmed, but the conversations are real and the desire from everyone involved is genuine. The appetite from fans who grew up watching the Bundys and who have followed Christina's journey through her diagnosis is enormous. There is a version of this reunion that could be something genuinely moving and genuinely meaningful, not just nostalgia for its own sake, but a real reckoning with time and change and the endurance of love. What Christina Applegate has exposed about Ed O'Neill, in the end, is not a scandal, is not a controversy, is not the kind of revelation that generates clicks because of outrage or shock. What she has exposed is something much harder to find and much more worth talking about. She has exposed the existence of a relationship built entirely on integrity. A man who saw a vulnerable young person and made the quiet, uncelebrated decision to protect her. A mentor who never stopped mentoring, never stopped caring, never made his support conditional on whether the cameras were rolling or whether there was any professional advantage to be gained from showing up. A TV father who became real, who stayed real, and who is still real today in the moments that matter most. Christina Applegate walked onto that set when she was 15 years old and did not yet know who she was going to become. She walked off at 11 years later as someone shaped in profound ways by the people she had worked alongside. And all these years later, facing the biggest challenge of her life, she has made clear that those connections are not history. They are present tense. They are ongoing. They are the kind of relationships that most people spend a lifetime hoping to find and too rarely do. The Bundy family was supposed to be a fictional creation, a vehicle for outrageous humor and social satire. What it became was something nobody planned for, and nobody could have scripted. It became real. And the most real thing inside, it was the bond between a man in his 40s who decided to be someone's protector, and a teenage girl who grew into one of the most courageous performers of her generation. That is the story Christina is finally telling fully, and is one worth every word.